You think you know Jack and the Beanstalk, a simple story about a poor boy, magic beans, and a towering beanstalk reaching the clouds. But what if this tale, whispered for over 5 millennia, is more than a children's fantasy? What if it hides a secret older than the pyramids, older than written history itself? From childhood, Jack and the Beanstalk is a story many of us cherish. We remember the thrill of Jack's daring climb into the sky, the giant's fearsome roar, and the magic treasures he steals to save his struggling mother. It's a classic fairy tale, innocent, adventurous, and filled with wonder. But beneath this familiar narrative lies a shadowy truth, an ancient secret buried deep in oral tradition, long before it ever took form on paper. This isn't just a simple children's story. It's a myth that has traveled through time and across cultures, carrying with it echoes of ancient rituals, spiritual journeys, and mysteries of life and death. For thousands of years, generations, passed this tale by word of mouth, adapting it with each retelling yet preserving its core themes. What those old storytellers knew, and what many modern readers overlook, is that Jack's story is a window into human history itself. A story told when writing was yet to be invented, when myths were the vessel for humanity's deepest fears and hopes. Imagine a world without books, without newspapers or smartphones, where stories were the only way to connect people across vast distances and generations. These stories weren't just entertainment, they were lessons, warnings, and guides to understanding the world, life, and death. In that world, the story of Jack wasn't about simple magic beans or luck. It was about a journey between realms, the realm of the living and the realm beyond. The beanstalk wasn't just a vine growing wildly, it was a symbolic ladder, a sacred axis connecting earth and sky, life and the afterlife. This story's survival for over 5,000 years is nothing short of remarkable. It means that countless storytellers from unknown tribes and vanished civilizations passed it on, ensuring its message endured through wars, migrations, and the birth of civilizations. And here lies the paradox. What we now see as a lighthearted tale of adventure and cleverness was once a profound ritual journey, a mythic passage that reflected humanity's earliest understandings of mortality, the soul, and the unknown. Once you start peeling back the layers, you'll discover that Jack's climb represents more than courage or greed. It's about crossing boundaries that humans have always feared and revered. Boundaries between life and death, the natural and the supernatural, the known and the mysterious. So as we dive deeper into the story, prepare to question everything you thought you knew. This isn't just a bedtime story, it's a living echo of our collective human past. Before we unravel ancient secrets, let's revisit the story you thought you knew, the one read to children worldwide, a tale of innocence and wonder. But is it really so simple? Jack and the Beanstalk has been told and retold countless times. Most people picture a poor boy named Jack, living with his widowed mother struggling to survive with barely enough to eat. When their last cow is no longer able to provide milk, Jack is sent to sell it at the market. Instead of money, he is offered a handful of strange beans, magic beans, the seller claims. This simple transaction is the story's turning point. Jack's mother, furious at what seems a foolish trade, throws the beans out the window. Yet overnight, a mysterious beanstalk grows rapidly, twisting and soaring high into the clouds. Driven by curiosity and hunger, Jack climbs. Above the clouds, Jack discovers a strange and dangerous world. A giant's castle stands, colossal and foreboding, guarded by a giant whose footsteps shake the earth. The giant's wife, showing kindness, offers Jack shelter and food but warns of her husband's deadly appetite. Despite the dangers, Jack sneaks through the castle, stealing treasures one by one, bags of gold, a hen that lays golden eggs, and a magical harp that sings on its own. Each theft edges him closer to disaster as the giant awakens and chases him down the beanstalk. The tale climaxes in a dramatic chase, ending with Jack chopping down the stalk, sending the giant plummeting to his death. This narrative, most famously recorded by folklorist Joseph Jacobs in 1890, is the version many grew up hearing. It frames Jack as a plucky, clever boy who uses his wits to escape poverty, even if it means stealing from a monstrous figure. It's a story of adventure and triumph, a classic underdog tale. But what is often missed is the complexity beneath these familiar scenes. The story is filled with symbols and tensions. The magic beans, for instance, are not just random plot devices. They carry spiritual weight. The beanstalk is more than a mere plant. It represents a bridge or axis between worlds. The giant isn't simply a villain but a powerful force guarding sacred treasures. Moreover, Jack's actions raise moral questions. He steals repeatedly, endangering himself and committing acts that could be seen as unjust or reckless. Yet the tale invites us to root for him, blurring lines between right and wrong. Interestingly, the version of Jack as a poor but clever boy reflects Victorian values of the late 19th century, emphasizing individual cunning, justice, and social mobility. Yet, this sanitized version is the result of centuries of changes and adaptations. The tale's earliest printings show different tones. In 1734, Jack Spriggins and the Enchanted Bean was a parody mocking the story as ridiculous, implying it was already so well known that readers could laugh at its absurdity. By 1807, Jack became more heroic, avenging his father's death and reclaiming stolen wealth, turning theft into a quest for justice. These shifts reveal how stories evolve to meet the cultural needs of their times. Jack's story, far from static, reflects changing values and social attitudes. Still, the heart of the tale remains, a daring ascent into a forbidden world, confrontation with danger, and the daring theft of magical gifts. This motif echoes in myths globally, hinting at a shared human fascination with crossing thresholds, claiming forbidden knowledge, and confronting the unknown. As you listen to the story anew, imagine it as a window into ancient human fears and desires, more than a children's fable. The beanstalk is not just a plant, it's a symbol of hope, risk, and the fragile boundary between worlds. What happens when a simple folktale meets the sharp pen of satire and the moralizing hand of Victorian society? Jack's story didn't stay innocent for long. The tale of Jack and the Beanstalk has always been alive, evolving alongside the societies that told it. While today's version appears as a children's classic full of magic and adventure, its history is far richer and stranger. In 1734, a booklet titled Jack Spriggins and the Enchanted Bean was published in London. Unlike the gentle versions, most of us know this early printed story mocked Jack mercilessly. It presented him as a foolish figure, someone who made absurd bargains and believed in impossibilities, like beans growing into a giant beanstalk. The humor was biting, signaling that by then, the story was so well known it could be publicly ridiculed. This moment of parody is crucial. You don't parody something unknown or obscure. The popularity of the tale meant that it was embedded deeply in popular culture, circulating orally and in print for generations. The satire hinted at a collective awareness, almost fatigue with the tale's absurdities. Moving into the 19th century, the story underwent another major transformation. In 1807, Benjamin Tabart published a version that reshaped Jack from a naive boy into a heroic avenger. This wasn't just a child's bedtime story anymore. Jack became a symbol of justice. A fairy appeared, revealing that the giant had murdered Jack's father and stolen his wealth. Jack's thefts turned into acts of reclaiming what was rightfully his. This version reflected Victorian ideals. The 19th century was a time of strict moral codes and emerging middle-class values. Stories were tools to teach lessons about justice, industriousness, and the right use of power. Jack's image softened from a reckless trickster to a virtuous hero, stealing not for greed but to restore order. This change highlights an important fact about folklore. It is never static. Stories bend and twist to fit the needs and morals of the time. What once may have been a cautionary or ambiguous tale became a clear moral narrative. However, not all versions conform to Victorian sensibilities. Folklorist Joseph Jacobs, who compiled many English fairy tales in 1890, collected a version closer to the older oral tradition. His Jack was a clever trickster who used luck and wit, not necessarily a good boy. There was no noble backstory, no fairy tale justice, just a boy who took what he wanted and escaped danger with his cunning. This Jack embodies the archetype of the folk hero who thrives on chaos and cunning rather than moral rectitude. He is the embodiment of humanity's fascination with the clever underdog who challenges the powerful. Jack's ambiguous morality reflects a universal storytelling theme, the trickster figure. Found across cultures, the trickster challenges norms, breaks rules, and reminds us that life is rarely black and white. What's also fascinating is the survival of specific story elements, like the chant fee fi fo fum. Though it sounds like nonsensical gibberish, this phrase traces back to much older oral traditions, cited even by Shakespeare and King Lear, written around 1605. At that time, it was already considered an ancient folk rhyme, associated with giants and ogres. Scholars suggest the chant may originate from Gaelic or older languages, where it likely served as a magical utterance to scare or warn. This phrase encapsulates the way oral traditions preserve fragments of ancient speech and beliefs, linking the modern tale to a deep past. Together, the evolution of Jack's story, from foolish boy to avenger, from trickster to moral hero, reveals the powerful role stories play in reflecting and shaping cultural values. The tale's adaptability shows why it has survived so long, and why it continues to captivate audiences. Jack's journey is not just up a beanstalk, it's through centuries of human imagination, society's changing norms, and the mysterious power of storytelling itself. Have you ever wondered why Jack's story feels familiar beyond its fairy tale surface? Because Jack isn't just a boy, he's the age-old trickster, and the chant that haunts his story echoes from ancient lips. Jack embodies one of the most enduring figures in world mythology, the trickster. This archetype is a mischievous, clever figure who defies authority, bends rules, and navigates danger with wit rather than brute strength. Unlike typical heroes armed with swords and shields, the trickster relies on cunning, luck, and deception. In Jack's case, he is neither purely good nor evil. He is a survivor, an opportunist who climbs a forbidden path, steals precious treasures, and narrowly escapes deadly consequences. His story taps into a primal human fascination with those who outsmart the powerful, even if their actions blur moral boundaries. This archetype resonates worldwide, from Anansi the spider in African folklore, Loki in Norse myths, to Coyote in Native American tales. Tricksters disrupt the natural order, forcing change and sometimes chaos, but often paving the way for new beginnings. In Jack and the Beanstalk, this trickster spirit is palpable. His daring thefts and escapes are thrilling adventures, but they also raise questions. Who is really in the right? Is the giant a villain or a guardian? Is Jack a clever hero or an intruder? Adding to the story's mystique is the iconic chant, fee fi fo fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Most of us recognize this phrase from childhood stories or Shakespeare's King Lear, but few realize its true depth. This chant is more than a spooky rhyme. Linguistic scholars trace its origins to ancient Gaelic, suggesting it was once a hunting call or magical incantation. In its original sense, it meant something like, "Behold food good to eat, enough to satisfy my hunger." The chant served a practical purpose, to frighten and intimidate, invoking the presence of a giant or ogre. It became a ritualized part of storytelling, signaling the monster's awareness and danger, heightening tension for the audience. Its preservation across centuries, spoken by Shakespeare and echoed in oral folklore, demonstrates how stories carry ancient fragments of language and ritual. The chant is a verbal relic, connecting Jack's fairy tale to a prehistoric past. Together, Jack's trickster nature and this chant enrich the tale, transforming it from a simple children's story into a layered myth filled with symbolic meaning. Jack challenges the giant's authority. Much like how tricksters challenge gods or kings, his thefts represent more than greed. They symbolize the human impulse to confront the unknown and claim forbidden knowledge or power. Meanwhile, the chant reminds us of the primal fear of the monster lurking just beyond the safe world, a fear deeply rooted in human consciousness. This duality, of cunning versus power, daring versus danger, is at the heart of the story's enduring appeal. By understanding Jack as a trickster and recognizing the chant's ancient origins, we unlock a deeper appreciation for how folklore preserves complex human experiences, fears, and values. It's a reminder that beneath every fairy tale lies a tapestry woven from history, language, and the collective imagination of countless generations. Giants aren't just figures in Jack's story. They loom large across mythologies worldwide. What if the giant guarding the castle is more than a villain? What if he's a relic of ancient truths shared by many cultures? Throughout human history, giants have been powerful symbols in myths and legends across the globe. They are figures of awe and terror, embodying forces far beyond ordinary human strength. Giants appear in the Bible, Norse sagas, Greek epics, and countless folk tales, representing primal power, ancient forces of nature, or ancient peoples long forgotten. Consider the biblical story of David and Goliath, a young shepherd boy facing an enormous warrior. The battle is more than a fight between individuals. It's a symbolic struggle between the vulnerable and the overpowering, between the new order and the old. Similarly, in Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus blinds the Cyclops Polyphemus, a one-eyed giant who devours men and dwells in a mountain cave. This story explores themes of intelligence over brute force and survival against monstrous odds. In Norse mythology, gods wrestle with the Jötnar, ancient giants representing chaotic natural forces predating the gods themselves. These giants are not just villains. They are primordial beings linked to the creation and destruction cycles of the cosmos. The recurring theme is clear. Giants symbolize ancient powers, sometimes gods, sometimes ancient tribes or races that preceded humanity as we know it. Some folklorists speculate that the giant in Jack's story could be a folk memory of a real tribe or group that was defeated and demonized in tales told by successors. In other words, these giants are echoes of historical conflicts, cultural upheavals, or even lost civilizations. This hypothesis aligns with the pattern found in many mythologies where former rulers, enemies, or invaders become giants in legend, larger than life and terrifying. Jack's giant, then, might represent an ancient adversary, a guardian of sacred or forbidden knowledge, or a symbol of the old world being challenged and overthrown. Understanding giants in this light deepens our reading of Jack's story. He is not merely stealing gold or magical items. He is engaging in a symbolic conquest, a clash between worlds, ages, or peoples. This universal motif is why versions of the Jack tale, or similar, boy who steals from the giant stories appear. From Italy to Scandinavia, India to the British Isles, the giant and the beanstalk are cultural constants, bridging geography and time, reminding us of shared human experiences, fear of the unknown, respect for the powerful, and the desire to overcome. By tracing giants in global mythology, we recognize Jack's story as part of a vast tapestry of human storytelling, where myths carry lessons, warnings, and memories of humanity's complex past. What if Jack isn't the innocent hero you think he is? What if in reality he's an invader, a colonizer stealing from a world that isn't his? This dark twist changes everything. For centuries, Jack has been cast as the clever, courageous boy who steals treasure to save his family. But when viewed through a different lens, his actions start to look far less heroic. Imagine Jack not as a playful adventurer, but as a foreign trespasser breaking into a sacred realm. The giant's castle isn't just a home, it's a protected domain guarded fiercely against intruders. Jack climbs the beanstalk, an alien invading a forbidden world, seizing its riches without permission. This perspective invites us to rethink the story's moral framework. Instead of justice, Jack's deeds resemble theft and desecration. Instead of heroism, he becomes a symbol of conquest and cultural destruction. The idea of Jack as a colonizer aligns with the broader human history of invasion, colonization, and the violent reshaping of societies. Stories from many cultures reflect the trauma of such encounters, often encoded in myth as tales of giants, monsters, and tricksters. Jack's relentless thefts and ultimate destruction of the beanstalk, cutting the link between worlds, can be read as a metaphor for severing connections to an older, perhaps indigenous order. The giant, far from a mere villain, could represent that ancient world's guardian or spirit. In this light, the tale takes on a chilling edge, the triumph of the outsider at the expense of the established world. Jack's climb is not a journey of discovery but an act of invasion. His spoils are stolen cultural treasures, and his victory marks the erasure of what came before. This interpretation resonates with post-colonial readings of folklore and myth, where heroes are reconsidered as oppressors and monsters as protectors of a threatened way of life. It also reflects real historical processes. Colonizers often depicted indigenous peoples as giants, savages, or monsters to justify conquest and theft. Viewing Jack this way forces uncomfortable questions about the stories we cherish and the values they convey. Is our admiration for Jack's cunning overlooking the violence underlying his victories? Are the tales we tell about heroes sometimes stories of loss for others? This darker, more complex reading doesn't diminish the story's power. It enriches it by exposing its multiple layers and inviting deeper reflection. Jack becomes a mirror reflecting human nature's duality, the drive to survive and prosper, but also the capacity to disrupt, displace, and destroy. Understanding Jack as a colonizer, we confront the ambivalence of myth. Stories are not just fantasies, but cultural memory, shaped by history's light and shadow. What if Jack's story isn't just an old fairy tale, but a living thread stretching back over 5,000 years? A tale told before writing, before cities, before history as we know it. Modern research into folklore has revealed something astonishing. Jack and the Beanstalk is one of the oldest stories known to humanity. Using classification systems like ATU 328, the boy who stole the ogre's treasure, scholars have traced versions of this tale across continents and millennia. From Italy to Scandinavia, from India to the British Isles, stories share core elements: a poor child, a giant or ogre guarding treasure, and a daring theft from a supernatural realm. This consistency hints at a shared ancient origin. What's remarkable is how these stories have survived through oral tradition for thousands of years. Before written language, humans preserved culture, morals, and history by passing stories from one generation to the next by voice. The tale likely began with the Proto-Indo-Europeans, a prehistoric people living around 4500 to 2500 BCE in the vast grasslands stretching from modern Ukraine to Kazakhstan. These semi-nomadic herders and storytellers spoke languages that would evolve into Greek, Latin, Sanskrit, Norse, and more. While they left no written records, their stories were etched into the collective memory of their descendants. Jack's tale is a remarkable survivor, a whisper from a forgotten world still echoing today. Researchers analyze these tales using techniques similar to those in biology, tracing family trees of stories to understand how they evolve and migrate. The fact that Jack's story appears in so many places suggests it was carried by migrations, cultural exchanges, and human curiosity. This means that the story you know as a simple fairy tale is actually a bridge connecting you to ancient peoples and their worldview. It reveals how storytelling is not just entertainment but a powerful tool for preserving identity and meaning. Understanding this gives new depth to Jack's climb. It is not just a fantasy, but a ritual journey, one that has resonated with human beings for millennia, across continents and cultures. Jack's story embodies universal themes: the young hero, the dangerous quest, the confrontation with the powerful, and the theft or gaining of something magical or vital. These motifs form the backbone of myth and legend everywhere. The survival of this story also speaks to the resilience of oral tradition and the human need to make sense of life, death, and the unknown. By tracing the roots of Jack and the Beanstalk, we glimpse the origins of civilization itself, a time when stories were the only way to pass on knowledge and hope. In this light, Jack is not just a boy climbing a beanstalk. He is the embodiment of humanity's enduring spirit to confront fear, cross boundaries, and claim a place in the world. What if the roots of Jack's story lie buried in the lives of prehistoric herders, roaming the vast Eurasian steppes? A world long vanished, yet echoed in myths we tell today. The Proto-Indo-Europeans are the mysterious ancestors behind much of Europe and Asia's linguistic and cultural heritage. Living around 4500 to 2500 BCE, they inhabited the wind-swept grasslands stretching from the Black Sea to the Caspian Sea, a vast untamed landscape that shaped their worldview and stories. Though no written records from them survive, linguistic and archaeological evidence lets us glimpse their existence. Their language was the ancestor of many modern tongues, from Greek and Latin to Sanskrit and Norse. But beyond language, they passed down rich oral traditions, myths, legends, and ritual stories that shaped later civilizations. Jack and the Beanstalk, or stories remarkably similar, likely emerged from this cultural milieu. The tale's themes, a young figure climbing a magical ladder or tree to confront powerful beings and seize treasure, align with Proto-Indo-European motifs about crossing between worlds, initiation, and transformation. There, society was semi-nomadic, dependent on herding and moving with the seasons. In such a world, storytelling was vital, a way to transmit knowledge, cultural values, and survival skills. Stories like Jack's would teach caution, bravery, and the consequences of crossing forbidden boundaries. Archaeological finds, such as burial mounds called kurgans, reveal ritual practices involving symbolic goods, pottery, weapons, ornaments, hinting at beliefs about the afterlife and spiritual realms. These practices resonate with the themes in Jack's story, a journey beyond the ordinary world to gain something sacred. This connection between Jack's tale and the Proto-Indo-Europeans suggests that the story functions as a cultural memory, encoding their understanding of life, death, and the cosmos. The beanstalk, for instance, symbolizes an axis mundi, a world axis linking Earth to heaven and the underworld. Such a concept is common in many ancient cultures and is central to Proto-Indo-European cosmology. The figure of Jack can be seen as a cultural hero or initiator, one who crosses thresholds, faces supernatural challenges, and returns transformed. These heroes appear throughout Indo-European mythologies, each adapted to specific cultural contexts but sharing a core pattern. By placing Jack within this ancient context, we better understand the story's depth and its role as a transmission of ancestral wisdom. It also reveals the power of myth to survive massive social, linguistic, and geographic changes. From Bronze Age herders to modern readers, the story's core resonates with fundamental human experiences. Understanding this enriches our appreciation of Jack and the Beanstalk, not just as a fairy tale, but as a living relic connecting us to humanity's shared past. What if the towering beanstalk Jack climbs isn't just a plant, but a sacred bridge, a cosmic ladder connecting the world of the living to realms beyond? In countless ancient cultures, vertical structures symbolize the connection between different realms of existence. The beanstalk in Jack's story fits perfectly into this symbolic tradition. The idea of an axis mundi, or world axis, appears in mythologies worldwide. It represents a cosmic pillar linking the heavens, earth, and underworld, a bridge for spirits, gods, and heroes to traverse. Among the Maya, the Milky Way was known as the World Tree, a celestial path souls traveled on their journey to the afterlife. Norse mythology features Yggdrasil, the immense sacred tree that connects 9 worlds, including the realms of gods, humans, and the dead. In Hindu cosmology, the Ashvata tree, sacred fig, symbolizes the universe's structure, its roots reaching heaven and branches extending toward the earth, a reversal that mirrors spiritual concepts of life and death. The ancient Pythagoreans in Greece considered beans sacred and feared them because they believed beans contained souls of the dead. The sprouting bean was seen as a living embryo, a miniature symbol of life and death intertwined. This reverence for the bean plant as a bridge between worlds aligns perfectly with Jack's magic beans growing into a towering stalk, a living gateway to the other world. Jack's climb is not merely a physical ascent but a spiritual journey. He moves from the mundane world into a mystical realm, crossing the threshold into a domain guarded by the giant. This journey reflects rites of passage found in many cultures, where individuals enter liminal spaces, thresholds between life and death, childhood and adulthood, ignorance and knowledge. Cutting down the beanstalk at the story's end may symbolize severing the connection between worlds, marking the conclusion of a spiritual journey or the finality of death. Understanding the beanstalk as a spiritual axis enriches the story's symbolism and explains why the tale has persisted across cultures and millennia. It resonates with humanity's deep need to comprehend life's mysteries and the boundary between the visible and invisible worlds. The beanstalk, then, is more than a magical plant. It is a symbol of transformation, transition, and the eternal link between life and what lies beyond. Could the giant in Jack's story be more than a monster? What if he's the guardian of the afterlife, the gatekeeper between worlds, watching over the souls that dare to cross? In myths around the world, there is a recurring figure who guards the boundary between life and death, a powerful being who watches over the realm of the dead. Could Jack's giant be one such guardian? Across cultures, giants or monstrous beings often serve as liminal figures, embodying the threshold where mortal life ends and the spirit world begins. The giant's castle in the clouds can be seen as a metaphorical otherworld, a place where the living rarely venture. The golden hen laying eggs and the magical harp are not mere treasures. They symbolize life's bounty and the soul's immortality. Music in many traditions connects the earthly with the divine, while golden eggs often represent creation, renewal, and eternal life. Jack's repeated thefts and his eventual destruction of the beanstalk could be read as violations against the natural order, an intrusion into the sacred realm and a severing of the link between worlds. The giant's warnings and threats hint at a deeper role, protecting the balance between the living and the dead. His menacing chant, fee fee fo fum, signals his vigilance, guarding against those who would steal what belongs beyond. In many ancient belief systems, death was not viewed as an end, but a transition. The journey to the afterlife involved passing guardians, trials, and often symbolic thefts or gifts. Jack's story mirrors this journey, with the beanstalk as the path and the giant as the sentinel. By understanding the giant's role as a guardian rather than a villain, we gain insight into the story's spiritual dimension. It reflects humanity's timeless struggle with mortality, the fear, respect, and mystery surrounding death. Jack's climb is thus a metaphor for the soul's ascent, his thefts symbolic of the gifts and challenges of life beyond death. This interpretation transforms the story from a simple fairy tale into a profound meditation on life, death, and the journey between. Jack's story is not alone. Across the world and throughout time, similar tales echo the same theme. Daring heroes crossing boundaries to bring gifts to humanity. What connects them all? The motif of a hero climbing to a forbidden realm, confronting powerful beings and stealing divine treasures is a recurring theme in global mythology. This pattern, known as the cultural hero motif, resonates deeply with human experience. One of the clearest parallels to Jack is the Greek myth of Prometheus. The Titan defied the gods, climbed to the heavens, and stole fire, the divine spark that brought knowledge, warmth, and civilization to mankind. For his rebellion, he was punished eternally, yet he became a symbol of cunning, sacrifice, and human progress. Similarly, in Norse mythology, Odin ventures into the land of giants to steal the sacred mead of poetry, a magical drink that bestows wisdom and the gift of storytelling. His quest symbolizes the acquisition of knowledge and culture from the chaotic forces beyond. The ancient Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh also features the hero entering a forbidden forest, defeating the guardian Habara, and claiming sacred cedar wood, material, reserved for the gods and symbolic of civilization's foundation. These stories share a common thread. Heroes cross into realms not meant for mortals, confront guardians, and return with gifts that transform human life. Jack fits seamlessly into this tradition. His thefts, the golden hen, the singing harp, the bag of gold, are not mere treasures but symbolic gifts representing prosperity, creativity, and eternal abundance. The beanstalk, like the ladders or trees in other myths, is the axis linking earth and sky, mortal and divine. This widespread motif reflects humanity's universal fascination with the idea of crossing limits, physical, spiritual, and moral, to bring back what sustains and elevates civilization. By connecting Jack's tale to these ancient myths, we see it not as an isolated children's story but as part of a vast cultural tapestry. These myths serve as metaphors for human aspiration, courage, and the quest for meaning beyond survival. Understanding Jack's place among cultural heroes deepens our appreciation for the story's power and longevity. It reveals how folklore preserves timeless themes, weaving them into new forms that continue to inspire and challenge. Jack and the Beanstalk may seem like just a children's tale, but beneath the surface lies an ancient story that whispers of life, death, and transformation. Are you ready to see it anew? The story of Jack and the Beanstalk is far more than a simple fairy tale. It is a mythic journey woven through millennia, carrying within it humanity's deepest questions about existence. What began as an oral tradition, before writing and history took shape, has survived countless changes, morphing to fit new cultures and values, yet always retaining its core essence. Jack's tale invites us to look beyond the familiar, to question the heroes we celebrate and the monsters we fear. It challenges us to see the beanstalk not just as a magical plant, but as a sacred axis, a bridge between the world we know and realms beyond. The giant, once dismissed as a villain, emerges as a guardian of a sacred order, a symbol of the mysteries that lie beyond life. Jack himself becomes both a trickster and a colonizer, a figure embodying the complexity of human nature, capable of courage and cunning but also disruption and conquest. This story is a mirror reflecting the human condition, our fears, our hopes, and our eternal quest for meaning. Its endurance through time is a testament to the power of storytelling, to connect us to our ancestors and to each other. As you reflect on this tale, consider what it reveals about the stories you hold dear and the lessons they carry. What truths lie hidden in other fairy tales? What ancient wisdom waits to be rediscovered? Jack and the Beanstalk is not just a story for children. It is a living legacy of human imagination and spirit. By embracing its complexity, we honor the past and enrich our understanding of ourselves. So next time you hear or read this tale, remember, you're engaging with a story as old as civilization itself, a story that continues to climb the skies and touch the clouds.